Welcome in, everyone. Ready for a deep dive into To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh, I love this one, a classic.
We're heading straight into Macomb, Alabama,
A town where time moves slow and gossip spreads fast.
and where one court case throws a spotlight on the deep prejudices simmering beneath the surface.
You know, what makes Macomb so fascinating is how Harper Lee creates this whole world through the eyes of Scout Finch.
It really is like stepping back into the South in the 1930s.
Exactly. You can practically feel the heat, hear the cicadas buzzing, and almost taste those sugary sweet iced teas on a sweltering summer day.
Right, and you immediately get pulled into Scout's world. We meet her father, Atticus Finch, the lawyer with an unshakable moral compass.
And let's not forget Jem, Scout's brother, always itching for an adventure, just like his sister.
Oh, and then there's Dill, their friend, who visits every summer. He is completely captivated by the mystery surrounding Boo Radley.
Ah, yes, Boo Radley. A recluse, a shadow, a figure shrouded in local legends and hushed whispers. He becomes this almost mythical figure in the children's eyes, a blank canvas onto which they splash their childhood fears and curiosities.
And those stories get out of hand, don't they? Remember when Jem tells Dill about the time Boo supposedly stabbed his own father with a pair of scissors?
Oh, yes, a casual Tuesday in Macomb. But later, we learn that detail might have been, shall we say, a tad embellished.
Right, because the book never actually confirms the whole scissors thing, but what it does do is paint this unsettling image of Boo after the incident, just going back to cutting out newspaper clippings.
Exactly. It speaks volumes about how easily gossip can morph into perceived truth, especially in a town like Macomb.
It's like a game of telephone, where the story changes with every retelling. And it's a powerful reminder of how our views, right or wrong, end up influencing how we interact with the world.
Especially when a trial throws Macomb into turmoil.
Exactly, and this is not just any trial, this is the trial of Tom Robinson.
A black man wrongly accused of assaulting a white woman, Mayella Ewell. Now, picture this. It's the 1930s, the Deep South. Racial tensions simmering beneath the surface of everyday life. It's a powder keg waiting to explode.
And who steps up to defend Tom?
Atticus Finch.
Atticus, risking his reputation, his relationships, maybe even his family's safety.
It's an act of incredible courage, especially in that time and place.
You can almost hear the whispers, the judgments spreading through the town square.
It was practically unheard of for a white lawyer to defend a black man, especially in a time when racial segregation was so deeply ingrained in society.
But Atticus refuses to let prejudice dictate his actions. He sees the injustice, he sees the blatant racism, and he chooses to fight against it.
It would have been so much easier to look the other way, to stay silent, but silence in the face of injustice. That's deafening, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Atticus's decision speaks volumes about his character. He knows the risks, the consequences, yet he refuses to compromise his principles.
A beacon of integrity in a town shrouded in shadows.
And speaking of shadows, we can't forget about the Ewells. Living on the outskirts of town, a family known for their poverty and their, let's say, colorful reputation.
And their word against a black man's. In the Jim Crow South, scales of justice often tipped based on the color of your skin.
It's heartbreaking. We're about to dive into the trial itself, and it is not an easy story to hear.
It's a slow burn tragedy, this trial, and at the heart of it is this clash between truth and prejudice, you know?
Absolutely, and we see that play out from the very first witness.
Bobby Ewell, Mayella's father.
Right, and you see right through him.
Oh, he's putting on a show, trying to paint Tom Robinson as this monstrous figure.
And he's practically tripping over himself to do it, even contradicting his own previous testimonies.
He's so blinded by his need to condemn, so eager to make Tom the villain.
And it's easy to get caught up in the theatrics of it all, but then you remember this man's life is hanging in the balance based on these lies.
Exactly. It's a stark reminder of how prejudice can twist something as simple as telling the truth into something dangerous, dehumanizing even.
Now, Mayella, she's a more complex character, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. You see her trapped within a system that offers her no options, no voice of her own.
And her testimony is filled with inconsistencies.
You can't help but wonder, what's the real story she's burying? What's the truth she's hiding?
It's tragic because she becomes a pawn, manipulated by the very people who should be protecting her.
And in Macomb, power often rests with those who shout the loudest, those with the deepest prejudices.
It's heartbreaking, but then there's Tom Robinson.
A man facing down an avalanche of hatred.
And yet, his testimony is one of quiet dignity.
He speaks plainly, honestly. He even admits to feeling sorry for Mayella.
Can you imagine? That statement, that simple act of empathy, it practically sends shockwaves through the courtroom.
It completely upends the social order that Macon clings to so desperately.
And despite Atticus's meticulous defense, despite the inconsistencies, the contradictions in the Ewell's testimonies, the jury still delivers that gut-wrenching verdict. Guilty.
It's a blow, not just for Tom Robinson, but for anyone clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, justice might actually prevail.
And what's remarkable is how the Black community responds. Remember how they leave food at Atticus's doorstep? A silent acknowledgement of his courage.
It's those small acts of kindness that cut through the darkness, a testament to the power of human connection, even in a town as fractured as Macomb.
But those scars run deep, especially for young Jem. He takes the verdict hard.
He's old enough now to grasp the weight of it all, to see the chasm between the ideal of justice and the reality of their living.
It forces him to confront those harsh realities, the ones that shatter your perception of the world as a fair and just place.
And then to complicate things further, Anne Alexandra arrives, bringing a whole new set of rules and expectations.
Oh boy, Aunt Alexandra. She's something else, isn't she?
She's obsessed with appearances, with upholding this image of the Finch family, their supposed place in Macomb's social hierarchy.
Like, it matters which families have been reading and writing the longest.
It's almost comical how much emphasis she puts on maintaining this facade of respectability while ignoring the very real issues of prejudice and injustice happening right under her nose.
And poor Scout gets caught in the crossfire of all of this.
She becomes the target of Anne Alexandra's attempts to mold her into this perfect Southern lady, complete with frilly dresses and endless etiquette lessons.
It's painful to watch, because Scout just wants to be outside playing with Jem and Dill.
She's a free spirit, and those social constraints, they just don't sit well with her.
It's more than just dresses and manners, though. Remember when Aunt Alexandra forbids Scout from inviting Walter Cunningham over?
All because the Cunninghams are poor. It's hypocrisy at its finest. They preach about kindness and Christian values, but those values vanish when confronted with anyone they deem socially inferior.
It's a harsh lesson for Scout and Jem, a crash course in the arbitrary nature of social standing and the hypocrisy that runs rampant within their community.
And as if things weren't complicated enough, the trial's impact, it continues to reverberate.
Because Bob Ewell, he's still out there, isn't he?
Oh, he's simmering, his anger festering.
And then it boils over in that chilling encounter with Atticus.
Spitting in his face. A public display of hatred.
And Atticus, he doesn't react. He just calmly wipes his face and walks away, refusing to sink to that level.
But Ewell, he's driven by a need for revenge, and as we'll see, his thirst for it, well, it has terrifying consequences.
It's like Macomb breathes a sigh of relief once the trial's over, but there's still this underlying tension,
Like a quiet storm brewing, waiting to unleash its fury.
And that storm finally breaks on Halloween night, casting a long shadow over Scout and Jem's world.
Picture this. Scout, all dressed up as a giant ham for the school pageant.
It's almost comical, isn't it?
This ridiculous costume, a stark contrast to the very real danger lurking just around the corner.
It's like a metaphor for Macomb itself, clinging to tradition and ignoring the darkness simmering beneath the surface.
And in that darkness, under the cover of night, Bob Ewell makes his move.
Fueled by hate and a thirst for revenge.
He attacks Jem and Scout as they're walking home from the pageant.
And the source material doesn't hold back. It paints a terrifying picture of that attack.
The fear, the chaos, the sheer brutality of it all.
It's a stark reminder that hatred unchecked, it festers and grows into something monstrous.
And when it explodes, the consequences are devastating.
But just when it seems like all hope is lost, a figure emerges from the shadows. Boo Radley.
The town bogeyman, the recluse everyone fears, he becomes their unlikely savior.
Talk about a twist of fate. The very person they shunned, the one they labeled a monster, acts with a courage and selflessness they couldn't even comprehend.
It makes you wonder, how often do we misjudge based solely on fear of the unknown? How many Boo Radleys have we dismissed without ever truly seeing them?
It's a powerful message about challenging our perceptions, looking beyond the labels we place on others.
But the story doesn't end there, because Atticus is faced with another moral dilemma.
He knows Boo saved Jem and Scout, but he also knows Boo killed Bob Ewell.
And exposing Boo to a trial, to the scrutiny and judgment of Macomb, it would be a cruel twist of fate for a man who, despite everything, is deeply vulnerable.
The irony is palpable, isn't it? The man who has dedicated his life to upholding the law, now grappling with the possibility of bending it to protect someone who, in the eyes of the court, might be deemed a criminal.
It's a decision that cuts right to the heart of the story's message, the importance of empathy, of seeing the humanity in others, even when it's difficult.
And ultimately, Atticus chooses compassion over blind adherence to the law. He understands that true justice means protecting the vulnerable.
And sometimes that means making difficult choices, even if those choices mean operating in the shadows.
To Kill a Mockingbird, it stays with you long after you finish the last page, doesn't it?
It's more than just a story. It's a mirror reflecting our own capacity for prejudice and for compassion.
It challenges us to confront our own Boo Radleys, those we've misjudged or dismissed based on fear or preconceived notions.
It's a call to action, a reminder to fight for justice, embrace empathy, and never stop questioning our own perceptions.
And sometimes the most important lessons, the ones that stay with us, they're learned not in the bright light of day, but in the quiet shadows where compassion and understanding can finally bloom.
I think that's something worth reflecting on, don't you?
Absolutely. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the complexities of Maycomb and the enduring power of Harper Lee's masterpiece. Until next time.